Hello, and welcome to episode 88 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. We're here today with Robert Goldman, president of Montgomery Housing Partnership in Montgomery County, Maryland. Robert, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Excellent. Glad to have you. The first question I'd like to pose to you today is, what are you currently doing, or what have you ever done to advance the public interest, and why?
Okay. I think my job is one that really, advances the public interest. Montgomery Housing I'm the president of Montgomery Housing Partnership, and we're a nonprofit that develops affordable housing in Montgomery County. We sort of take a more comprehensive approach to that. So, in addition to developing actual units of affordable housing or homes for people, we're also having a number of programs for our residents. So we have preschool program, an after-school program for elementary school kids. We have teen programs, and for adults we have ESOL classes, computer classes. So we're directly impacting people's lives, and then we're also working in the broader neighborhoods around where affordable housing is located.
So I just want to start by asking to clarify the definition of what affordable housing really is. Of course, it may vary based on region. Since you're in Montgomery County, I'm sure the definition of affordable housing here may be different in an area where the cost of living is much less, say, in another part of the United States. Could you please define what is affordable housing?
Yep, that's a great question. And, the reality is, for different people, affordable housing means different things. The definition we use for our programs is a standard definition that's probably in most or many programs that we're funding sources that we use, which is 60% of the area median income. So what does that mean? That's sort of the area median income is the average, so to speak, income of people in the Washington, D.C. region.
Including Virginia and Prince George's County.
Yes. So It's not just Montgomery County, it's the whole region, and then it's 60%. So the average median income is about a little over $100,000 for a family of four. So 60% is $60,000. But it gets very complicated. I don't want to bore your audience with the details. If you're a family of three, a family of two, those numbers adjust downward a little.
So say a family of four, mean household income is $100,000. So affordable housing is any housing that costs less than $60,000 a year?
Is affordable housing is what's affordable for that person making $60,000.
Oh, okay. So if the median income is $100,000, so you say, what if I have a family of four that only makes $60,000 a year? And then what would be affordable for that family?
So we're going to get into more minutia, but typically we say you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income towards housing. If you're spending more than that, you're beginning to be burdened.
So $18,000 a year for a family making $60,000 a year.
So divide that by 12, and that's your monthly rent. That's what anything less than that is what we call affordable.
So 18 by 12 is like $1,200 a month.
Yep.
So basically $1,200 a month rent, which at market rate is maybe getting you a studio apartment.
Exactly.
But you're saying instead of it getting you a studio apartment, it give you enough space to get to house a family of four.
Yeah, comfortably, yes.
And so how does that? So why? And so okay. So why is affordable housing important? Now that we've defined it, why do we need affordable housing?
Yep. So every day, it's funny. Every day we go. I'm sure many people in your audience are going to Starbucks and going to the store and other things, and there are people helping them out. And the reality is those folks need to live somewhere. And in Montgomery County, being a high-cost area, many of those folks can't afford to live where they work. We have teachers, we have firefighters, we have the retail workers, construction workers, people who are making our lives better every day, and they can't afford to live in the community where they work. And so it helps all of us to have affordable housing for people that have affordable housing, because that makes for a better, more diverse economy, but it makes our lives better too. It makes for our standard of living. For example, let's just take a teacher. Montgomery County has a very good school system. We're rated some of the top in the country. And these teachers are coming oftentimes from Frederick, coming from other, some might even be living in Pennsylvania.
I believe MCPS teachers make something in between the low $40,000 a year range up to $112,000 a year. So that's, I think, the range for our listeners.
Yeah. And so at some point, those teachers, as good as they are and as well paid as we try to pay them in Montgomery County compared to maybe some other jurisdictions, at some point they're going to say, geez, I could just work here in Frederick. Why commute all this distance? And then we lose some really top quality teachers.
And you have some attrition, you have workforce development issues, and then for those teachers who are still living in a less expensive area and commuting in here, they're adding to gridlock and traffic.
Exactly, so that's the other element. And then what you have, so you either, to afford to live here, or to be able to sort of survive and let's say work here, you're either commuting long distances,
right,
or you're living in overcrowded situations.
Yeah.
And I think you might have seen or heard about the fire that was in Long Branch this summer. There was 24 apartments that were demolished in a fire/explosion in the Long Branch community of Silver Spring. Not a building that we own, but a building in the community. What was startling was that there were 65 families living there.
65, not people, but families?
Families living in 24 units.
So in 24 units, you had well over 100 people. Interesting.
And so that goes to the issue of if they're either going to go long distances and clog the streets, or they're going to live in overcrowded situations.
You're going to take a one-bedroom and put 5 people in it.
Yep. And just because that's the only way you can survive, and in this county.
So how many beneficiaries of MHP, or do you call them beneficiaries, or do you call them members?
They're residents.
Residents.
Properties.
So how many residents work within a few miles of where they live through MHP? Since that seems to be an important component of affordable housing.
To be honest, I haven't really tracked that data, but we serve 1,700 families. It's probably, say, average, 2.5 people per apartment unit, and maybe so we're serving 4,200 people, and many of them are living, working near where they live, and
so it is working.
It's absolutely working. We have what's interesting. Just looking at data, we have people in the retail industry, a lot of people in the healthcare industry, government workers, librarians, just a wide range of people who are, as I said, just working every day in this county who, just need an affordable, decent place to live.
So to participate with MHP, they need to be making, if they're a family of 4, less than $60,000 a year for the household.
Yep. And so what we really emphasize is mixed income housing.
Okay.
And so we, on a typical apartment building.
So MHP owns an apartment building.
Yeah. So we'll typically we do 2 things. We'll buy older apartment buildings.
So you're kind of a commercial real estate business.
Yes.
Okay.
With a mission.
Yeah.
Commercial with a heart. So, not to say others don't. So we, let's say, typically go out and buy an older apartment building. Might be somewhat run down, so it's a little cheaper to buy. We do a substantial renovation. We use specialized financing and able to renovate the building and then keep the rents affordable. A typical market rate, private luxury, whatever developer would, to do that, the only way to do a major renovation is to substantially increase the rents to pay for that renovation. So what we're able to do is through specialized financing, keep those rents affordable, give people affordable rents, quality housing.
Do you have any market rate units in the buildings you own?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and do the people in those units recognize that MHP owns the building and what MHP does?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We're not shy about it, but
yeah.
We've had some. So let me answer the original question, which was mixed income housing. So what we try to do is set aside a certain percentage at very low incomes, less than 30% of median income, less than $30,000 for a family of 4, and in many cases they make less than that. We do a certain portion, probably a good majority of the folks are in the 40 to 60% of the area median income, $40,000-$60,000, and then we have a certain percentage that are what we call market rate. No restrictions on incomes, and in some buildings that balance might be 50-50. In some cases that might be 90% affordable, 10% market rate. It just depends on the building, depends on the financing, depends on the community where it's serving.
Yeah. So there are moderately priced dwelling unit requirements in Montgomery County of 12.5% per building. Do your units satisfy and exceed the MPDU requirements?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, like, if we were to, we just built. So, in addition to buying older apartment buildings and fixing them up, we also do some new construction. So, we just finished building a building called the Bonifant in downtown Silver Spring, 149 units, senior building, right next to the new Silver Spring Library.
Isn't that a nice building?
It's a beautiful building, and there, because since it's new construction, 12.5% had to be affordable. Well, we have 90% affordable, so we're no one ever worries about us meeting those.
How do you afford to do this? When there's other commercial real estate companies, they're always saying, gosh, 12.5% MPDU, that's really hurting our bottom line. It's maybe even nearing making this project not even financially viable. And you're blowing it out of the water with 90%. How are you? Are you subsidized? Are you getting subsidies for this rent? How are you able to? I guess you're a nonprofit, right? So you don't have to pay taxes, whereas they would have to pay corporate income taxes. Is that the main difference, or is there any alternative revenues that are making, or tax credits that are making this a viable mission for you?
Yeah, I think there's, as I said, there's specialized financing that, this is our specialty, this is our niche. You can sort of cobble together. Being a nonprofit helps us get some of those.
You get grants?
Specialized financing. We sometimes get grants, loans, what we call soft loans, where it might be lower interest, or you only pay back if you have the cash flow. But at the end of the day, people need to understand the residents are paying rent. We're typically getting the first. So with that rent, pays for the operations and pays for a certain amount of debt. Now, the amount of debt it can support, because the rents are lower, is less than what it would be for a luxury building or what have you. And so we then have what would, again, if we were comparing apples to apples, someone else doing the Bonifant to us doing the Bonifant, because our rents are lower, we have a gap. And so it's our sort of job to kind of raise that gap.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they are paying rent. We do have debt. It's not like government subsidizes the whole thing, et cetera, et cetera. We use the private sector as best we can, and effectively the public dollars are used to sort of leverage the private financing.
So you get public dollars from the county and the state, and then you use that to leverage private financing?
Yep.
And so would it be possible to have a nice building, as you mentioned, like the Bonifant, be a lot more market-based units, and then use that to subsidize in another building?
You could. It's possible. Those things, people have done many different things with mixed income financing in that way. There are people who have, we haven't done it, but there are folks who have, for example, done a portion of their site as, let's say, high-end condos, and use the profits from the high-end condos to do an affordable deal on another side of the site.
So
one of the things that makes the Bonifant work, and kudos to Ike Leggett for his.
For our listeners, Ike Leggett is the Montgomery County executive.
Yes. Kudos to him for having the forethought of saying, here we have a public use on this site, this beautiful site in downtown Silver Spring, where lots of high-end housing is being done because of the redevelopment of downtown Silver Spring. We're going to build a library here on this site. There's extra space here. Let's also do some affordable housing. And it's probably one of the first examples, at least in our county.
There's affordable housing in the library?
Next to the library. So originally it was going to be above the library, but because of different scenarios, it's now next to the Silver Spring
So
library.
they have good access to a lot of community resources.
They're downtown Silver Spring. They're next to the library, next to 2 grocery stores.
Sounds like a good deal.
It's exactly a great deal. And it allows for people who have lived in downtown Silver Spring or Silver Spring generally for many years, aged in this community
To remain there.
and to remain there as they get
As
older.
it gentrifies, and if they're not property owners but they're renters, right, then then they could get priced out of the neighborhood, but you're providing them an opportunity to age in place as renters.
Exactly.
Have you worked with the Renters Alliance at all?
Absolutely. I know Matt very well, and we've been on panels together, and we talk a lot about the issues of the county.
For our listeners, Matt Losak is Executive Director of Montgomery Renters Alliance, also a previous guest on Public Interest Podcast. So, Rob, we've been talking a little bit about what affordable housing is, why it matters, and how we can actually make it happen. Well, we haven't yet spoken about why is Rob Goldman involved? Why does this matter to you? Right? There are a million issues. You could save the whales or anything under the sun. But this is something that matters to you. You're the president of the MHP. How did you get involved and why?
So it's a long story, and as I tried to trace back why and how I've ended in this road here, I trace it back to my childhood, believe it or not.
And where was that?
And I grew up here in Montgomery County, born and raised here, and I love this community. And product of the public school system. And, I was all about sports growing up, played sports, watched the big Redskins and Nationals fan. Well, at that time I was Senators fan. And if I had to read a book, it was a sports book. And one day my parents said to me, enough is enough. I don't want you reading. You got to read a real book. What am I going to do here, But I don't know. It's beyond my, comprehension to do that. So I went to my teacher and said, can you recommend a book? And she recommended To Kill a Mockingbird. And, living in Montgomery County, let's face it, I lived in a sheltered life. And this book really exposed me to the world outside, exposed me to, injustices. And, and I began to realize, these injustices kind of make my blood boil. I want got to do something about it. And so as I kind of went more and more into different studies and reading, I began to realize these injustices really got me going. And so it led me eventually to go into the world of public policy, and then eventually to the world of housing policy. And, I was working, one of my first jobs working in the district, saw some of the worst housing conditions imaginable. This is a time when the District of Columbia was in a different space, and there were a lot of sort of rundown buildings, and folks weren't really fixing them up, and I really wanted to do something about it, and so I really made the transition from public policy and legislation to, I went back at night, got my, I have a law degree by training, but then went back at night and got a degree in real estate finance, and so I could understand these numbers and how can we make how they make these projects work.
For our listeners who aren't familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird, just very quickly, it's a book about early 20th century Southern America, where there's a case and it deals with a white lawyer defending a black man and told from his daughter's perspective. So Rob, so you first learned about injustices, kind of made your blood boil, went down in D.C., saw that there were housing issues and urban poverty issues, and you went to law school to develop a career in law, and then you didn't pursue that. You decided you got inspired?
Before I went to school, went to law school, then went to the district, did housing stuff. I really came out of law school and wasn't really interested in the law firm life, and really having grown up here and lived the world and sort of been believing in sort of fighting for justice, I sort of went the legislative route. So I came back, I went to UCLA Law School, came back to the area where I grew up.
Did you work for the Congress? You say the legislative route.
Yeah, so I worked on the Hill for a congressman, and then worked for the D.C. City Council's Housing Committee, and did housing policy.
Is that where you first got exposed to housing issues?
Yep.
So it was through a job. You were working in the legislative branch in the federal government, then in a city municipal government. You ended up working for a politician or a committee there, and you ended up just getting a job on housing, and that's how you first got into that.
Yep.
And then kind of serendipitously.
Somewhat, but I had always had an interest, even through law school, about sort of housing issues, and it was sort of interest of mine, but yeah, you know, one could say it's somewhat serendipitous. Yes.
Okay, so and then you got involved in the housing issues, and then from there you went back for an additional degree in financing, and then lo and behold, you're now the president of MHP.
There's a few steps in between, but yes.
So, you know, as president, what is it that drives you every day? Why is it that, what do you think about when you wake up? Why do you do this job?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best jobs I've ever had. You know, to be honest, I've always loved my jobs. This is one I really enjoy. And really what gets me up in the morning is the residents that we serve, and to see the joy on their face when they move into an affordable unit. We have unbelievable stories of residents who, you know, have endured terrible traumas in their lives and have been out on the streets, and to be able to have affordable housing has been very meaningful for them and life-changing. And so it's just sort of, you know, it drives me to do what we do. And the other piece that we really haven't talked about, and while we're called Montgomery Housing Partnership, it's really the other piece that really gets me excited every day is the programs and the residents we serve.
You mentioned the daycare.
Yeah, I mean, it's not daycare. It's actually after-school program where it's real academic. We're not just kind of housing. You know, it's just not a drop-in thing. It's we take this seriously. We have a full curriculum. Kids come at like after-school programs. They come in after school. They do the homework. They have a reading specialist.
And this is in the building that they live in.
Yep. We have a community. So we typically create a community center at all our larger properties. Mm-hmm. And when we started, the average GPA was about a 2.8. Now they moved everyone as an average of 3.5.
Oh my God!
We've got folks who we had folks in. We're doing an exciting program in partnership with Arcola Elementary School, where we're actually doing 3 classrooms at our property, 3 classrooms at the school. Mm-hmm. All the kids from our property go to Arcola, so we're basically doing 6 classrooms of kids from Arcola Elementary.
So you employ teachers or tutors?
Yes, absolutely. And so they're
an education company in addition to a housing company.
Absolutely, and it's creating opportunities so these kids can succeed and have the same dreams and the same opportunities as anyone else. And that's really what it's about. It's, you know, it's one thing to provide the housing, but at another level, you know, we know about the achievement gap in Montgomery County, and this is the least we can do to make sure that they have dreams just like, you know, I graduated from high school in Montgomery County, had my dreams of becoming a lawyer and fighting for justice, and they have dreams too of being lawyers and police officers and, you know, who knows what else, and doctors and et cetera. And we want to make sure they have that same opportunity. And, you know, for me, when I came home from school, my mom was there. She was my after-school program. Mm-hmm. She made sure I did my homework. She made sure I was on the straight and narrow, et cetera, et cetera. Well, today's world is different. You know, many parents, and especially folks who have lower income, their parents are working 2 to 3 jobs, and you know, when they get home, their parents aren't there, and so we provide a place where they're doing their homework. We keep them on the straight and narrow, and make sure they succeed, and that's what it's all about.
So. Sounds like you're in the. Well, do you ever talk to other commercial real estate representatives, individuals from other commercial real estate firms?
Sure.
What do they think about all of this, MHP?
They absolutely love what we're doing, and you know, we have board members who are in the development community, and are very pleased to be associated with the work we're doing, and yeah. All
right. Well. Listen, Rob, this has been a wonderful podcast. That has been Robert Goldman. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And Rob tries to give other people the opportunity to see their dreams come true. The reason why Rob does what he does with Montgomery Housing Partnership is to enable people, and these aren't people looking for a handout, working people, just to get a little break. He tries to help them just get by. He gives them a little hand up to say, look, you're going to pay rent, but it'll be a little bit easier this month because you're in affordable housing. And you know what? Your kids, I know they can do well in school. They just need a little bit of a helping hand. And I'm going to provide that program, and make their dreams become a reality. So for Rob, it seems as though helping others actualize dreams, especially those who wouldn't have it without his intervention, especially coming from a background where he already had built-in assistance to help realize his dream and his lifestyle. It seems that helping others realize their dreams is a big part about why Rob does what he does. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been episode 88 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.